Welcome to Inside the Birds TV with your hosts, Jeff Mosher and Adam Kaplan. Joining us now, his name alone reminds us that it's that time of the year for millions of fantasy football players worldwide to get ready for their drafts. He is the owner and publisher of FantasyPoints.com, the morning host of SiriusXM Fantasy Channel, the guru himself, John Hansen. Thank you, John, for joining us.
What's up, Jeff? Nice to be on the podcast here. Nice to work with my guy, Adam Kaplan. Yeah, it's the time of the year for me in which I get contacted by people I went to high school with and haven't talked to face-to-face since 1986. But all of a sudden, we're boys again. It's like the 80s all over. But, it's all good. I'm not complaining.
Adam, are you one of those freeloaders, or do you actually work with him?
Yeah, I do. The thing that, Jeff, that's so and John will admit this, he's a celebrity suck-up. His list of celebrities that contact him for fantasy advice, current and former Major League Baseball players. John also knows, he's friendly with maybe the best fantasy running back in NFL history, John, LT. Tell him about your relationship with LaDainian Tomlinson.
Well, I had a magazine for the previous website that I had, Fantasy Guru, which I'm no longer affiliated with whatsoever. But I had the idea of doing a player interview. I was the first fantasy guy to interview a player. And in 2004, I'm like, this LT guy is unbelievable. So I did interview a 24-year-old LaDainian Tomlinson. And the headline on the magazine was "Charging to Glory." I'm like, this guy's in the hall. Like Adam knows, I'm the king of the early prediction. And amazingly enough, probably 14 years later, once LT retired, I did a radio show with LaDainian Tomlinson once a week for 3 hours, which was great. And he's one of the all-time greats, greatest guy ever.
So that was a Hall of Fame running back, a Hall of Fame fantasy football expert. So that's pretty good. It's a good pairing right there. I hear that there's an even better story, though, about how you and Adam met. So I got to hear this.
Yeah, well, Adam was doing some work with his nephew who's had a fantasy website that was actually a big competitor of mine. We kind of didn't like each other. We were really aggressive and competitive. I'm
not surprised.
I never even met him before, though. That was the funny thing.
Yeah, we never even met. So this would have been in 1996, I believe. And I kind of got my start. I mean, you may actually have a couple of your listeners or viewers who actually remember this, but way back in the mid-'90s, early to mid-'90s, up until 2000, I did this little local cable access TV show out of Atlantic City. Of course, I'm in the Philly area with you guys, but back then there were only 30 channels on. So we had a little bit of a following, and it was pretty crazy. I always say it was like Wayne's World meets Howard Stern. All you need to know, really, our only sponsor was Delilah's Den. So I mean, that pretty much tells you everything you need to know. So one year, it was 96, I got wind that Keith Jackson was doing an event in Atlantic City. So I somehow finagled Keith Jackson.
This is the Eagles tight end at the time.
Yes.
Right. Actually, I believe he had gone on to Miami, but he was a free agent.
Okay.
So it was weird because it was late July. It was a week before training camp. Yeah. Anyway, so I didn't even really know this would happen, but we get him on the show, and it turns out he broke the news on this show that he was joining the Green Bay Packers. I mean, can you imagine that now?
No.
It's absolutely amazing, right? And of course, they won the Super Bowl that year.
That was the year, for the first, 1996.
And here's Kaplan watching the show. He's like, "Who the hell is this guy?"
I couldn't understand it. I just happened to be down the shore, and I saw it. I'm like, "Who the F is this guy? Who does he think he is? The audacity!" And my nephew, Sam Kaplan, who was the original Fantasy Football Insider, who was John's really one of the 2 or 3 competitors that you had. Sam grew up in Jenkintown, Pennsylvania. John was in Atlantic City then? Where were you?
Atlantic County.
Atlantic
County.
Grew
up, Galloway Township.
Yeah, I was amazed at who is this slapdick John Hansen? Who's this guy?
Right.
And anyway, so a couple years later, John and I met. Did we meet at that fantasy convention in Las Vegas, or I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we were in that expert league together, and we got to know each other that way. But I think to summarize, we're both like, Philly people, and we got along really. We realized once we kind of met that we kind of liked each other.
We did.
And then we started doing work together probably 1997, right? 98.
And we the great thing, Jeff, is Jeff works closely with me, so he knows. You either get my humor or you don't. You either get John's humor or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't get the way that we are, you're not going to like us. And John and I took an instant liking to each other, and we bust each other's balls hard. Probably John more on me than I do on him.
Yeah.
But John sometimes doesn't take it all that well. See that smile there? See that? See.
Right.
I take
you're
it.
Good. You're good though. You're good.
I do it because I know his level. See, Jeff, I know his level, and I dig in because. And the greatest thing is, Jeff, is on Twitter, because when they know I'm digging on him on our show on Sirius, they say, keep going, keep giving it to him, keep giving it to him. And I keep giving it to him. But John is a great guy, and I've always said this about him. He's so fearless. He doesn't give an F what people think. He's like, this is what I think, and this is what I'm going with. And if you don't like it, too bad. And guess what? He's right most of the time. That's why he's the best in the business.
Yeah,
well, that's awesome.
And I actually had a little bit of an epiphany, Adam. We talked
Another
about
one?
it a lot on the show in that, I've always been like the aggressive guy in fantasy drafts. Like I try to draft off like next year's cheat sheet. Miles Sanders is a great example. He was a 6th round pick last year. Well, his ADP was like average draft position was like 75 overall. Well, now it's 9. Right? It's 9. So why wouldn't you take a shot on that
And by
guy?
the way, guess who's being blamed for that one? Oh, you
Yeah.
right.
No. And
But go ahead.
no, just to finish the story, I realized that why I went that way. My first pick ever in a fantasy draft was 1987. I took a washed-up Walter Payton, who did have like 370
87, you
touches.
mean 87?
87. What I said?
Yeah.
97. Yeah, whatever. It's so many damn decades.
Yeah, I got you.
But it was a brutally bad pick. I was so embarrassed, and at that point, I'm like, that's it. I'm only going for young, upside, ascending types.
That's how you did. Is that right? That's how
exactly right.
It's funny.
Yeah.
That was on my list of questions because John has brainwashed me in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
I had this history of drafting older players for some stupid reason, and it just permeated the way I was drafting. And he goes, "What is wrong with you?" He was browbeating me. I'm like, "Okay, I'll stop doing it." And the last 2 years, that's all I've done for the most part. Yeah. And John, you started up at the Fantasy Points Dynasty League. This is a league where we keep all of our players. And if you look at my team, it's save. How many players did we draft in that league? 20,
probably about 18, 20.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had 2 players maybe older than 27, Julio Jones, and I can't remember who the other player is.
Yeah.
Every other player is young with upside. So, Jeff, you brought up Miles Sanders last year. I know you went to Penn State, but you were the first person who really got on the Miles Sanders bandwagon. I know it's partially because of your affiliation to Penn State. But, Jeff, what did you love so much about Sanders last season?
You know what? It really, maybe to steal a concept from what John was talking about, I was actually not as impressed by the player as I was the concept of an explosive, multi-dimensional halfback in an offense that had already proven to be very successful with a good head coach who, for the most part, controls time of possession and has just been looking and begging to have the type of 3-down running back that you and I, Adam, knew that he's wanted all along. He's from the Andy Reid tree. And part of my affinity for the drafting of Miles Sanders, and remember, even before they picked Sanders, Adam, I just said this guy needs a 3-down back. He's gone 3 years. He was he's won a Super Bowl, but if you look at every single year, he's jogging somebody in, jogging somebody out. He comes from the Andy Reid tree. He wants a Brian Westbrook. He wants a Jamal Charles. He wants a Kareem Hunt. He wants somebody in that mold because that's what every West Coast spread offense coach wants. And I knew, having watched Miles at Penn State, that he had the explosion and the quick cut-on-dime ability. I knew he didn't catch the ball a lot at Penn State, but I figured that was something that he would eventually grow into. And he did it a lot quicker than I thought. Last year, not just catching dump-offs, but as we talk about those HB go routes against Detroit and Minnesota. And that's why it was just about, I think we see this anytime, whether it's Andy Reid, whether it's Doug, whether it's Matt Nagy. If you put a pretty decent multi-dimensional running back in that kind of offense, that guy's going to shine. I mean, 2 years ago, Tariq Cohen was a fairly decent running back, right?
Oh,
and he's not built the way a Miles Sanders or a Jamal Charles or Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be. And look, we can segue right into that there. I think, John, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire naturally is going to have a great year because 2 years ago, Kareem Hunt had a great year as a rookie.
Sure,
so why not think that CEH won't even be better?
Yeah, and in Kansas City, they set up the run by passing, and he's a great receiver, but he's also a highly skilled runner. So I can absolutely envision him doing a lot of damage in the first half in the passing game. Second half, defenses are just so worn out trying to defend this potent offense, and all of a sudden he starts popping off, some longer runs here. So absolutely, very good player, and I'm all in on him. The question is, how high do you go?
That's my question to you, my friend. Yeah, because you and I on our show, Sirius XM Fantasy Football, we said pretty much we didn't think he was a top 5 pick. Have you adjusted that thinking? Sometimes you have to change your thinking.
Yeah.
Have you adjusted it to give him a top 5 look?
No, I think top 5 is still just a little strong, although we'll see about Alvin Kamara. But as far as I've actually moved Derrick Henry into the 5 spot here.
Have you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. The talk of him being used a little bit more in the passing game, they don't have an established veteran who can play on third down, so I think he'll get a few more opportunities at least early in the season. But it's also another way to get him in space and pick up a head of steam. So having catching 24 balls doesn't sound like a lot, but it kind of puts him over the top because the dude's going to get 300 carries here. But after that, I think he's in play, and to the point of playing to win. Like, I'm sold on the player. We're obviously sold on the offense. Over the last 2 seasons, every time Damian Williams played 60% of the snaps or more, he averaged 25 fantasy points a game in PPR, which is a huge number. Now, guys, do we expect Edwards-Helaire to play 60% of the snaps? You're damn right we do. So there you go. I mean, if healthy, it's almost a slam dunk.
Plug him in. I got it.
Let's go back to Derrick Henry really quick, because I have a philosophy, John, I wanted to run by you, and it's a very difficult one, I think, for people to embrace. And it might be a little bit like your always drafting 2 years ahead thing. My philosophy is it's very, very hard to have a career year, right, and then have a career year the next year. So I wouldn't tell anybody don't draft Christian McCaffrey number 1 overall, because even if he was 10% less than last year, it's still going to be a lot. But Derrick Henry is a guy I look at and I say, man, everybody's going to be gunning for him. Ryan Tannehill is a good, not great quarterback. They've got the red circle around them now for what they did last year. I don't know if Derrick Henry can just put up top 5 running back numbers again, unless, as you're mentioning, maybe he catches the ball a little bit more. Yeah. But I just don't believe that offense is up there with some of the great offenses that will produce great running back numbers. So I almost look at Derrick Henry, and I'm not afraid to slide him to that 7, 8, or 9 and maybe elevate some other guys like a Dalvin Cook or Kamara, as we talk about, Nick Chubb, something like that, because I just don't know about Derrick Henry again.
Well, the one thing about Derrick Henry, I mean, it's still relatively early, is, he is very durable, and, he hasn't had a massive workload. At Alabama, he did carry the ball a ton 1 year. But, before last year, he never went over 215 carries, so only 1 season with 300 plus. And I got to tell you, at the end of the day, Jeff, he is one of the most fascinating players of the last 20 years because he bucks so many darn trends. I hated him for 2 years.
I know.
I was right.
You and I.
A year and a half. And then I've been, actually last year I didn't really hate him. But at the end of the day, I just think that he's an outlier type of player. I think you throw that stuff out the window. And by the way, for what it's worth, I actually do believe that the offense is for real. As Adam can attest, I'm a Ryan Tannehill truther. And
it only took 8 years.
Yeah, it only took 7 years. But I always said about him, I understand he's not perfect. He may not make everyone around him better. But if you put him in the right system, run-based offense, play action, pick your spots, he's talented, he's athletic, he's got a good arm, he throws an accurate ball, he's tough, he's competitive. I think they're going to pick up right where they left off last year, Adam. And then Arthur Smith might be one of the rising young offensive coordinator type stars in the league.
Yeah, he did a good job. His first half of the season, he was trying to kind of feel his way through it. And then the second half, he really got going. They get Adam Humphries back, their slot receiver who missed the majority of the time last season. That clearly was an issue, particularly on third down. It's now Jonnu Smith's role at tight end. Delaney Walker's long gone. I like their approach. They've got better skill guys than they did last year. Darrington Evans is a pretty good young backup. He's a rookie, obviously, but he's pretty gifted. So, John, let's talk about – let's switch gears a little bit. One of the things that I know every year, you adjust your draft approach. Some years you want to go heavy running back. Some years you want to mix it up. What is your draft approach this year in 2020?
Well, RBs are bust, really. I mean, the running backs are getting so much more love these last 2 or 3 years that if you don't get in the running back business really early and you try and be slick and you try and be fancy with it and go zero RB or whatever, it's just not an optimal approach because the running backs are flying off the board. The premium ones are flying off the board pretty early, first 2 rounds, obviously. But that also pushes the good wide receivers down the board a little bit. And we are a little lacking with the high-end stud receivers. So my approach is to go, hot and heavy on the running backs. And by the way, I have certain criteria. I understand why zero running back existed for a good couple of years, maybe 5 years ago was big because the running backs were dropping like flies, getting hurt all the time. Well, they've actually been somewhat durable. I focus on, again, the running backs whose best football is in front of them or right now in the present. Right now in the present would be McCaffrey, Zeke, Kamara, Henry, Dalvin. The best football in front of them would be Barkley, Sanders, Edwards-Helaire. I think Mixon and Aaron Jones probably qualify as right in the here and now. You got Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, Cam Akers, these rookies. So I am a little picky with my running backs. But I do want to load up on them because, again, if you just start a draft and just lock it in almost and say, I'm going to go running back. Now, maybe if you're picking at the beginning of round 1, you may not get a great running back in round 2. But then you have an early pick in round 3, so you can take a guy like Jonathan Taylor. But for the most part, if you start a draft running back, you will have a great opportunity to get a couple of really nice receivers. Adam Thielen, Odell Beckham, I do like this year. I know Adam isn't loving him.
Just the injury history. That concerns me.
Yeah. Robert Woods. I think the Rams are going to bounce back big. DJ Chark. So my thing is my perfect strategy in terms of when I attack the positions. I'm waiting on the quarterback, but I don't need to wait forever. If I'm in the 6th round and Dak Prescott's there and I don't really love the running backs or wide receivers, I'll take them. But ideally, hold off on that position because the depth is ridiculous. Again, pounce on the running backs. Be wise at the wide receiver position because that's really deep too. Get like 2 of them with your first 5-6 picks. And then I always like to hold off on tight end. I usually – you can get an advantage paying up for a Kelsey or a Kittle, but I do love getting the steal of the draft, the value. Last year, my number 1 tight end, breakout tight end, was Mark Andrews. So that was a great pick. So I want to get this year's Mark Andrews, and there are a lot of young dudes who fit that profile.
Yeah. I want to ask you a question about the running back wide receiver dynamic. First, I want to tell listeners to download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app today and use code ITB for a special offer when you sign up. That's code ITB for a special offer when you sign up at DraftKings Sportsbook. So I'm curious with your remark about, get the running backs first. How many running backs would have to go off the board for you before you take your first wide receiver, who I assume might be either Michael Thomas or Devontae Adams?
Yeah, it's Michael Thomas, but
right.
Here's the problem. Here's a very basic tip that I always give out when you're not sure if you should take a running back or a wide receiver in round 1. Look at the average draft position data. Hopefully understand the trends in your league and how people roll in your league, and try to project what the best position player will be for your second round pick. The problem is, and I've heard people tell the story, they clearly weren't listening to me. Not that I have all the answers, but they're like, Michael Thomas, slipped to 7 overall, so I took him. And then unfortunately, for the second round pick, the best players were all wide receivers. You know what I mean? So I had to maybe reach for a guy that I'm in love with. So honestly, Jeff, to answer your question, I'm going like 10. running backs.
10. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. That makes a lot of sense. Tell me about Nick Chubb, because I thought in a tape watching, I watched like 5 or 6 games from him 2 years ago when he was a rookie, and I thought he was phenomenal. And then he started off like a house of fire, I thought, last year. But then once Kareem Hunt got reinstated, you saw they went to a more, I don't want to call it a 50-50, but obviously Kareem Hunt got a lot of time, and that took away from Nick Chubb. But I still think Nick Chubb's a really talented running back, and I almost can't figure out why you would want to take the ball out of his hands. Where do you see him right now in fantasy value?
Yeah, he's a tough one because he's absolutely fantastic. There's no doubt about it. And I do like the offense quite a bit this year. I think the biggest problem with Chubb is everyone is in PPR realm, right? I mean, PPR is kind of taking over the world. And Adam and I we're to blame for that a little bit too, because we've been really
we were the
table.
We were the PPR, like, if you weren't in a PPR league, you're a moron. We were calling people that for years. But
it's guys like you.
But Hunt outproduced Chubb in 6 of the 8 games.
It's amazing. And they love Hunt. This coaching staff loves Hunt. Yeah. John, what is your thought process on PPR versus half point PPR? What do you prefer?
Well, as much as we pounded that table for PPR, I do think it's getting a little out of control here. When a guy like, I don't know, no offense to Penn State, but a couple of years ago, Deshaun Hamilton at the end of the year was catching like 9 balls for like 12 yards. It was like ridiculous here. So I think I think we should probably look to go half point PPR. By the way, I think with the running quarterbacks just taking over, I think we need to pull back on the credit we give them for their rushing yardage. I just say tack it onto the passing yardage, which would make Lamar Jackson at least you have a chance going up against Lamar.
So one thing I want to ask you, when you talk about, you were saying in passing about values and so forth and waiting on certain positions, every year you're great with values. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's tight ends, like you were talking about holding off. Give us a couple guys, couple value picks where you go, you know what, these are mispriced, like you pointed out in your piece for fantasypoints.com about mispriced ESPN players. Give us a couple guys that you think that are really good values right now.
Well, with quarterback, I can start there. You could argue that, there are a lot. Actually, once you ironically get past the big names who run, Lamar, Dak, Kyler, of course, Mahomes, Russell, Watson, all that. I like Josh Allen and, of course, Carson Wentz. I've always been a Wentz guy. I think Daniel Jones is mispriced right now. I know
Tough schedule. Schedule.
Yeah, but he'll run. That defense isn't going to be very
They're thrown
good.
a lot, yeah.
Right. I think so. Okay. Baker, I think, is a little mispriced. I know he's not going to sling 40 touchdowns or anything like that. I think he could throw 30, though. I really feel good about their offense. By the way, we haven't heard a thing about Baker Mayfield this summer, right?
No, it's a big great.
That's good.
That's good. How great was it when Charlie Weis came on our show and he actually brought that exactly up, and he was so right.
Yep.
The hype for the Browns last summer was nauseating. When I was with them for 2 days with the Colts, all you heard is about the Browns and how great everyone thought they were going to be, and it completely went the other way. So I think it's actually a good thing, John, that we're not hearing the hype with the Browns.
Yeah, no doubt. I also like Jared Goff. I know his margin for error doesn't run all that well, but his touchdown percentage was like 3.5% last year. The previous 2 years, he was at like 5.8 and 5.7. Okay. And Todd Gurley scored 12 rushing touchdowns last year. He's no longer there, of course. So I think he could surprise with like a 32, 33 touchdown season. Moving on to the running backs, it's hard to be a value because everyone is all over them. But I've always said, and it's back to the Miles Sanders point, it's a buying opportunity when you look at most of the rookie running backs. Some guys like Edwards-Helaire this year, Zeke back in the day, a couple of years ago, 4 years ago, whatever. This year, I love Jonathan Taylor. People are skeptical, so he's not going to be a free pick. But mark my words, he'll be a number 1 pick next year, and you can get him in the 3rd round. And I think Cam Akers for the Rams will be a number 2 pick next year, and you can get him this year in the 5th round. So I like those guys. And then, Adam, you have kind of helped me and turned me on to DeAndre Swift because I was down on the organization.
Yeah, he's had this leg injury. He's now back at practice, but he's so far ahead, John, of where they thought he would be because he's a rookie and not having an offseason in preseason, but really accomplished in the pass game more than I knew going into the evaluation of the player, and he's picked up everything they've asked him to do. And I'll tell you what, he's in a sharing situation with Kerryon Johnson. It would not shock me by midseason if he wound up being their main back.
Yeah. I mean, I go with the pedigree all day long. I mean, pro-style offense, Georgia. I love Georgia. I mean, they produce great NFL players here, especially running backs. There's certainly Zach Moss is another rookie.
Yeah.
Hell, J.K. Dobbins, Adam. I have not been advocating drafting him, but, man, I am on record stating Mark Ingram will be gone next year, and Dobbins will be a number 1 pick. I mean, lock that in. But, man, it sounds like he's going to play some this year. Plenty of wide receivers. Certainly feeling good about DJ Chark, very much like Adam Thielen. I think DK Metcalf is going to have, a coming out party. Hollywood Brown's our guy.
Yep.
Love Deontay Johnson. Got a player prop on him that I like. I also kind of like Will Fuller this year. I mean,
do you really?
Yeah.
All right.
I've never liked him too.
I know. You and I, we've done ever since he was a rookie. Well, because the problem with him was injury history, feast or famine.
Right.
When he's good, John. You could say in a way he's elite when he's great. The numbers are massive, but the variance, you just don't know what you're getting from the guy.
Bunch of Philly guys here too, with Swift and Will Fuller and all that. And
do you like him because DeAndre Hopkins is gone now, and he kind of
good point. Good point.
Doesn't hurt. No, I don't think their defense is going to be very good either. And Deshaun's got great chemistry with Will Fuller. We're all worried about chemistry this year with the passing games and the timing and all that. Well, he's got a new slot receiver, Randall Cobb and Brandon Cooks. Well, Will Fuller's kind of his boy. So for the first time ever, I'm buying him. I've loved Brashad Perriman all year, but now I'm worried about this knee with the swelling. But also, 2019 offensive MVP for the Philadelphia Eagles, Deshaun Jackson, baby. He is a great value.
Explain that, John, what you mean by that.
Well,
last year's MVP.
I jokingly, after we all know he went off week 1, and then I watched the offense week 2 and 3, and I'm like, Deshaun's like the MVP of the Eagles. Like, they're a different team without Deshaun. So I jokingly, every time I mention it, I was like, "You're 2019 MVP. Played only 1 game, but don't care." He's a
pretty good value, John. Late, obviously. No one's really drafting him very, very obviously in the first half. Where do you get him? 11th, 12th, 13th round, that area?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And by the way, think about Miles Sanders when we're stretching defenses vertically here. Last year, like watching paint dry here.
It was terrible. Cosell said it was the slowest offense last season.
Yeah.
Now it might be one of the fastest.
Some of these other rookies I like too. I mean, I love Michael Pittman late. Rager, of course, we were in on him. Hopefully he'll be okay. Then in tight ends, I'm a Hayden Hurst guy. I'm backing that.
So am I.
They'll be playing from behind a lot. He's more athletic than Austin Hooper. He's better than Austin Hooper. I like Noah Fant. I did not like him last year. I think he's going to be a critical piece of their offense. Chris Herndon, I hadn't heard anything. He got hurt today. Is another one that I really, really like. There's so many, good tight ends this year. I still like Hawkinson as well. So there's.
How do you feel about Dallas Goedert?
There you go.
It's just he's so difficult to wrap your head around because he's probably going to be a little bit more of a matchup guy. Specific defenses. He'll give them problems. Teams that play a lot of man, things like that. So, obviously Zach Ertz is there. They kind of cancel each other out. That's a tough one. Whenever I'm up against that, I don't know. I've only been favorited by Old Takes Exposed once.
Is that right?
Yeah. It was about the Patriot tight ends, Gronkowski and Hernandez. And I was just talking about that season. I think they meant all time. But I said, I don't know if either one is going to go crazy. They're going to kind of like.
Well, yeah.
But actually, Gronk was like tight end 12, and Hernandez was like tight end 14. So, I wasn't talking big picture there, but Goddard is a tough one for me. I have got him at 17. 53 catches, 585, and 5 touchdowns. I mean, it's a tough projection.
Adam and I were recently talking about Austin Ekeler, and I'm a little scared of him based on the ADP. I see him going anywhere between 8 and 12 and 13. And the quarterback change there almost makes me, I don't want to say completely ignore him, but I'm really afraid to touch him as high as I've seen him going. Do you feel that way too?
I agree. I did kind of miss him last year, although, the Melvin Gordon thing, we just didn't know like how long it was going to take and all that. But, Adam and I have always joked about Phil Rivers. We say he's got a cape with a big C on it because he's Captain Checkdown. So now you go from Captain Checkdown to a guy like in Tyrod who is not going to go through his progressions and then check it down. He's just going to, okay, first read's not there. Let me tuck it and run. I agree. That's certainly a problem here for Ekeler. It'd be one thing if he was a third-round pick. Then you'd be like, fine. But you gotta use some serious draft capital to get him a second-round pick.
Yeah, I see him as a second fantasy back. I would not draft him as my first. You're right, John, with the checkdowns. The lack of checkdowns. Remember, we said that on our show, Sirius XM Fantasy Football, that the thing with Rivers last year was that he was running for his life. Yes, he can't run, but he was moving all the time just to get rid of the football. Yeah, he threw some bad picks, some bad decisions, but he didn't want to get hit because their line couldn't block him. He was getting rid of the football. Tyrod's a guy who holds on to the ball too long. And by the way, the quarterback, Herbert, immensely athletic and talented, he does the same thing. He's a guy, see it, then throw it. Yeah. So I don't know how much he's going to check down when he plays.
Some of those guys can make up with it with rocket arms.
Yes, and he's
got
one.
It's still you don't like to see that.
All right, I'm going to throw a name out, and I almost want both of you. Adam, I want you to weigh in from what you're hearing side, and then, John, you can process this from a fantasy side. And, of course, it's going to center around one of my Penn State guys. But Chicago, Allen Robinson, who's pulling the trigger, and how much is that going to impact him? Adam, who's pulling the trigger? And, John, you can tell me what that's going to do.
It's so funny, Jeff, you mentioned that. John and I were together on Tuesday to do our show. I'm on with John every Tuesday and Friday this year. And John actually brought that up because I love A-Rob. He was my breakout player of the year in 15.
I have a man crush on him.
I think he's tremendous. A high character guy, great player. He's yet another player that has proven you don't have to be fast to be a great NFL receiver. Right. And you've seen how well he's done with various quarterbacks. I'm willing to let's say I get my first two picks are running backs. I have no problem with him as my first receiver. You could say all you want about how bad the quarterback play has been, wherever he's been, but the guy gets it done. Did a good job. John, remember I told you last summer he was doing great coming off the ACL?
Yeah.
And he did very well. He had a very good season. He is fine as my number one receiver. I know there are going to be some weeks where he's not going to get the ball because the quarterback play isn't good enough. That makes him maybe a middle-of-the-road number one fantasy receiver, but I'm taking him as my one without hesitation if I've got two running backs with my first two picks.
Yeah, I agree. And at fantasy points, we have him at wide receiver 6, which is a little higher than most. We've got him ranked over DeAndre Hopkins, Mike Evans, just behind Thomas, Adams, Julio, Godwin, and Tyreek. And at the end of the day, if you can catch 98 balls with those quarterbacks last year, which he did, third in the league, you're balling. I mean, you're just absolutely balling.
The guy's a stud.
Yeah.
So Adam, do you think Nick Foles pulling the trigger here?
Yeah, everything I've heard would suggest that he has a small lead. Nothing's been decided yet, but just my feeling has been for the last 2 weeks that he's got the job. Again, very small lead, but I do want to say this: had this coaching staff been able to get Trubisky, because remember they restructured their coaching staff, right? The offensive staff, Matt Nagy hired Bill Lazor, DiFilippo, and Ron Castillo. But just talking to the guys who are going to work with the quarterbacks, Lazor and DiFilippo, to me, those guys would have gotten Mitch Trubisky straightened out, but they didn't have time to work on his mechanics in May and June. Yeah. They missed, even think about it, they missed 24 practices plus a preseason, and he had an abbreviated training camp. There's just not enough time. It's a shame because Trubisky's got talent. He just needed stronger coaching, and he's getting it, but they just didn't have enough time.
But think about Allen too, real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Exactly, Jeff.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right. The thing about him, though, too, is, I've been complaining for like 15 years. It used to be so easy, with, two receivers on the field, as the ball's going. Now you spread them out and they got, it's diluted, and fragmented, the production. Well, not really in Chicago. Now, Jimmy Graham's actually done pretty well, but he's Jimmy Graham. He looked like he was 46 last year. So we'll see. They've got Anthony Miller, and that's it. So they really treat Robinson like a 1. which is, I won't say rare, but you don't see it like you used to see it.
Right. Let's go. I want to ask you, because Adam and I talk a lot about the Raiders. Adam knows what's going on there. They've really brought in a lot of offensive weaponry. Darren Waller, though, was a guy who kind of broke out last year. The one thing that stood out to me was he had a ton of catches and a ton of yards, not a lot of touchdowns. I think he only had 3 or 4. Yeah. But now I'm wondering, though, with all that they've done to improve the speed of their offense with Ruggs and with the kid from South Carolina,
Ryan Edwards. Yep.
Ryan Edwards. Yep. And with a second year of Josh Jacobs, if there's a room for Waller to continue to build on that and get better.
Yeah, I agree. I'm skeptical. I'm always skeptical, and no offense to Waller. I mean, it's a great story, but I'm always a little skeptical when guys, after a little while in the league, kind of come out of nowhere. I think he'll be fine, though. I still think he's a big part of the offense, but he was third in targets last year with 117.
He had 90 catches, right? Didn't he have like 90?
He had 90 grabs.
Crazy.
117. That was second most catches.
He won't come close to that number, John. I just don't see it. At 70, though, look, you're right. Both of you guys are right. Ruggs, Edwards, and the other one is Hunter Renfrow, who missed a chunk of the season last year. He's healthy.
Right. Oh, and Jason Witten, too.
Yeah, and old man Jason Witten's their wide tight end. So, yeah.
And Foster Moreau, they use in the red zone a lot.
With 5 touchdowns last year.
And Nelson Aguilar. Don't forget about that.
Aguilar, if he makes it, by the way, talking to the Raiders, he's going to back up the Z position and the slot position.
Makes sense.
He might return punts. So they're loaded. Like last year, they lamented their lack of help. They had no depth. Now they actually have great depth. So let me follow Jeff's question up, John, to one thing. And I wrote something on the Raiders for fantasypoints.com subscribers, which should be up very soon. Here's my question to you. As much as Derek Carr has disappointed us, fantasy many years ago he was decent. Does he have a chance to be a decent fantasy quarterback? Or at worst, maybe if you're in a 2-quarterback league, does he have value for you?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely, positively think so. Last year, again, I am a Ryan Tannehill apologist, but last year when Tannehill signed with the Titans, I'm like, oh, he's getting this job because Mariota just underwhelms. And, of course, now he's there. So I don't think a lot of people are saying, oh, it's just going to be like, Mariota lost his job to Tannehill. Carr's going to lose his job to Mariota. Well, Tannehill's a lot better than Mariota. He's certainly got some issues here. But, I think people don't realize their O-line is top 5 in the league, returns all 5 starters.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Granted, we're dealing with some rookies here with Ruggs and Edwards, but you do have some veteran guys like the aforementioned Aguilar. You got 17 tight ends who could catch a bit, and you got a bunch of running backs here. Yeah, I mean, Carr is frustrating, but I do think on the low end he's – in fact, once you get real deep, 150, 60 picks into a draft, I'm kind of targeting him.
All right. Question I've had for a while, because I've been getting some feedback that Broncos players really like Drew Lock. So I'll ask you this. If Drew Lock plays 16 games this year, where does Courtland Sutton finish among the wide receivers? Is he a top 5?
Yeah, I mean, it's like a chicken or the egg thing with that. Like, last year they didn't have anybody else. So they just, peppered him with targets. And now, of course, they've got a lot more options. But do they, therefore, open things up for Courtland Sutton? So I think he'll probably be somewhere right around where he was last year, between like 15 and 20. 6 touchdowns last year was a little underwhelming. I remember that Minnesota Vikings game. Of course, they were with the 3rd-string quarterback. They had a drive at the end of the game where they could have won the game. And they threw almost every ball to Sutton, but everyone knew it was coming. So it'll be interesting to see if the presence of Judy, a more polished Noah Fant could really open things up for him on the outside. But he's definitely a good player and a solid play to target. Ideally, 5th round is about a good spot to get Sutton. But, yeah, probably right around where he was last year, 15, 20.
He could be it's a little bit forward thinking, but when I had Galladay as one of my breakout players 2 years ago, Sutton is a candidate to do that. But my only issue there is he's playing with such a young quarterback. This is his first full season. John, you look 2 years ahead. I think next year with Locke, it's going to be that huge season. But I'm with Jeff, though. I think he does well. I just don't think he's going to hit that high mark because I don't know that Locke is going to be there yet, but man, they're John. They've gone from mediocre pass targets to like, oh my goodness, they're loaded. Oh, then you add Melvin Gordon to the backfield.
Yeah, no doubt. They are working in a new system here with Pat Shurmur. I think at the end of the day, my thing is I'm still a little skeptical on Drew Lock. Sometimes I'm sold on young quarterbacks, Adam, as you know, but for whatever reason, I can't get there. I didn't really see enough. I thought Scangarello did a great job with him last year, not putting him in a position to succeed, not putting too much on his plate.
Sure.
But now you do move on. He's got a lot of tools, though. I mean, the kid's got great size. He's got a really good arm. He's athletic. I guess it's a lot of it is processing. And the kid has been in so many darn systems too, right? I mean, he went through multiple systems in college, and now he's got 2 in 2 years in the pros. By the way, Denver, they passed on him twice in the draft. Twice. So, I mean, I don't think they were like totally sold on him either. So, rooting for him. I hope he breaks out. I'm just not sold it's going to happen.
All right, let's get to Eagle players, John. Let's talk about Wentz, Sanders. You talk about Sanders. Give us an idea of where you would take them. Ertz, you talked about Goedert. You talked about Djax. Jeff, we missed anyone else? And also,
Rager.
by the way, their defense. Rager, right, who's coming off an injury, unfortunately.
Well, unfortunately, the defenses have just devolved into just absolute crap. I mean, it's just really hard to draft a defense that you can actually keep, and I did hit the Steelers last year, though. I had them at
all right.
2.
All right.
I did have the Patriots at 5, but that's hard. I've got the Eagles right now at 13. I'm not sure they're going to be a unit that you want to keep. But, Adam, as I've said to you a million times, when Carson was coming out, and, I'm not a huge college football guy, but, I surround myself. I try and talk to people who I respect and all that. And I went in and I watched some tape and some games, and I really like what I saw. I tried to kind of think – I thought to myself, okay, I feel pretty good about this kid. Like, where does he rank in terms of, like, 25 years in my career, in terms of my good feeling before he takes a damn snap in the NFL? And I said his rookie – I said top 5.
Really?
Although Sam Bradford was in that 5.
Well, he got hurt a lot, unfortunately. Yeah,
I did love me some Sam
Well,
Bradford.
it's funny you say you talk to Bradford. You talk about Bradford. I can't tell you how many coaches I talk to that either coached him or went against him. They go, "Oh my God, he throws the prettiest ball I've ever seen. It's so tight.
Beautiful.
The mechanics are great."
Yep.
But what happened is because his knees were shot.
Yeah.
Jeff knows this. Jeff, when I would go to practice, his lack of mobility. I mean, I've seen some slow quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know who was slower, the Statue of Liberty or this kid. I mean, he just couldn't move.
Well, he's eating all that Angelo's pizza, Adam. So, I mean,
did he? Oh, I've never been there.
Yeah.
Oh, man. The one in downtown Philly, right? In Center City.
Well, the one that's making all these waves, it's in South Philly.
South Philly, okay.
By the Italian market. But you have eaten the food at I had a Sirius XM party at my house when the draft was in Philly.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And Angelo's, that's when they were still here in my hometown here in South Jersey. But with Carson, look, I just think he's a sexy pick. I mean, a lot of exciting upside here. I mean, look what he did in 2017, 33 touchdown passes. So it's been a little tough, a little slow going, but I just can't get past, that dream season where the planets align. And, we probably did that in 2017, of course, before the injury. And if they can stay, vertical with their passing game,
they're going to.
We all know he's an aggressive thrower of the football.
That's right.
It just opens up everything underneath for the tight ends. Yeah, so I absolutely like Carson Wentz this year, and I think he'll, if healthy, the dude's getting 30 touchdowns. I mean, he got 27
easy.
For God's sake.
It's funny you say that because I look at the guys that he worked with last year to finish the season. The guys that played against the Giants in whatever week that was.
Oh, I know.
None of them were on the roster week 1. I mean, it's crazy. But Jeff, let me ask you this question.
Mm-hmm.
Hightower, Djax, those tight ends. We'll see what Rager can do. I know you reported that he's likely to miss week 1. Is that correct? Is that or is there a chance?
Yeah, no. I mean, well, there's a chance. There's always a chance, but it's it's a 3 to 4 week injury, and we're 2 weeks away from the season opener.
But so they're going to have him at some point, and then they're going to get Jeffrey back at some point. Why can't Wentz, if these guys stay relatively healthy, Djax staying healthy is 12 games. Okay, that's really what they could hope for. Why couldn't he throw 40 touchdowns, guys? Jeff,
yeah.
what do you think about that number?
Well, I don't see why he can't. I mean, like you mentioned, he almost threw 30 last year with one of the, with guys signed off the street. Yeah. I mean, the big question would really be this. What has been very reliable for them over the last few years, their offensive line,
that's true.
Suddenly has question marks. And Carson,
that's a concern. Yeah,
it's not so much that I think he's going to just, get under siege, but Carson is a guy who's been hurt when he's been hit. So you just worry more. Again, you going back to the durability. But what I like, and John mentioned this, Scangarello's impact, right? I feel like we're going to see a lot of Carson Wentz out of the pocket, more so than in the past, and that's really where he does some really good damage. Yeah. But from a fantasy standpoint, the guy was fourth best quarterback last year in on third down, and third best in the red zone. I mean, when you're top 5 in situational football, you're doing a really good job.
And that plays into my point, Jeff.
Yeah.
Right. That plays into my point with all the pass targets. But you make a very good point. The offensive line right now, not only are they down 2 starters, Lane Johnson is coming off of an injury. My understanding is he'll be ready for week 1, but it's never good that he missed time. Miles Sanders is going to wind up missing 3 or 4 weeks. That's concerning for week 1. Not that he's going to not play, but you don't know how good he's going to be week 1. You're going to have warm weather. I'm concerned for the early part of the season with the Eagles offense, mainly because of injury. That's just the reality right now. They've got a lot of guys who are not playing right now or not practicing. Yeah. When they come back, they're going to have missed a decent amount of time. So I'm pulling a little bit back, to be honest with you guys, on the Eagles offense for the first couple of weeks. Yeah. Once they get acclimated, I think they're going to be great.
I'm a little worried, but I will say this too. Like Carson, 9th round pick. Do you ever recall thinking back, that 9th round pick ruined my season? Right. No, it didn't. It's almost all upside from there. No. So get Carson and get a good backup just in case. Like Jared Goff's a great one.
That's the guy I was thinking of. Yep.
I kind of like Tannehill as well. And by the way, I don't know what Carson's ADP is in the Delaware Valley. He may be a 2nd round pick in Philly. But, here's a couple. Just
know your league, by the way. Know your league. That's one thing you need to know, what you can get away with and not in the leagues. Go ahead, John.
2 stats. Over the last 2 seasons, only Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes have finished as a QB1 as often as Carson, which is impressive considering what he's worked with. And, of course, you probably know this one. Last year, he became the first quarterback in league history to throw for 4,000 yards without having a single wide receiver over 500 yards.
That's just, and that forced him. Jeff, remember when we were talking last year that he had to trust his pass targets? It didn't matter that they were, as you said, street free agents. Just trust these targets, and he did. And you saw those guys get better. The Deontay Burnett's, these other guys who came out of seemingly nowhere.
I kind of like
Perkins. Well, he's had a great camp.
Burnett
he's had a great camp. He's had a great camp.
Burnett was like Darnold's guy.
Yeah.
At USC. I guess he's doesn't move that well, but I remember watching some USC games thinking, that kid's pretty
This guy gets up, John, he gets open. It's going to be fascinating to see if he makes the roster. So there you go on the Eagle stuff, guys.
Well, let me ask John real quick about Boston Scott. Is he a late round guy to maybe get in there in case Miles Sanders gets hurt? Do you look at Boston Scott as someone that because he catches the ball, he does all the things that Miles can do, just not as dynamic?
I actually prefer Scott Boston, to tell you the truth.
You love saying that. You love saying that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Boston.
I mean, yeah. He looked like Darren Sproles. I mean, to me,
stockier version, for sure.
So as Adam continues to tell us, he's the handcuff. He's the backup.
For now, he is. But I'll tell you what, though, I do want to make one thing clear here. Corey Clement's never looked this fast. Not that he's fast.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But he's moving well, and Peterson did say, look, that he hasn't been this healthy in a long time. Let me throw this over to Jeff real quick. Do you think there's any chance Clement could take that number 2 job from Scott?
Yes, this is something that we've talked about. I think that if Miles Sanders were to get hurt, I think that they would balance. I don't think
committee
Boston Scott becomes the guy. I don't think Clement comes the guy. I think first and second down, you see a lot when you want to go downhill, you give the ball to Clement, and then you integrate Boston as your gadget, your third down guy. If you're playing a team that's really crappy in the mid interior level, like the Eagles are at linebacker sometimes, then you get Boston Scott out there a little bit more, and you're trying to match him up in the passing game. I think that there is no reason to think that one or the other can't perform well in any game. But that's almost better from a reality standpoint than fantasy standpoint. If you know what I'm saying.
But you set it up well because Jeff, I've always felt this about Scott and Clement. Even let's say this is one of the reasons why the Eagles want to sign Carlos Hyde. They didn't think that if Sanders were to suffer an injury, be out like say 2 months, that they had that lead back. That's why they wanted Hyde as an assurance policy.
Yeah,
I love that guy right now.
I love the by the way, the South Jersey connection to Wisconsin running backs. That actually started with Ron Dane.
Yeah, number 27.
Berlin, New Jersey. Then Corey Clement, and of course, Mr. Jonathan Taylor, Salem County, New Jersey. So I don't know what I love the local connections, because I do national radio. So
DeAndre Swift, right, John? I didn't even know he was from Philly till you told me. Where is he from?
Yeah, he went St. Joe's Prep and everything.
Did he?
Yeah.
Wow, how about that one?
Yeah, and Philly, by the way. How about Philly though? Little DJ Moore, Chris Godwin,
Matt Ryan,
Charters Ryan,
Jonnu Smith that we that with the Titans.
Philly, I did not know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Philly kid. I'm telling you, they're getting there.
We are getting.
All right, John, we're going to let you go soon, but I did want to ask you really quickly before we get you out of here about some prop bets because I know you're into that. You mentioned Jonathan Taylor as one, I think, earlier.
My goodness, this thing is this is the GOAT of 2020 season NFL prop bets.
Go.
Jonathan Taylor over 700.5 yards.
Oh my God, is that it?
That's it.
Hey, now, see, because you just said that you're going to drive it about 500 yards.
He may get that by Halloween, people.
John moves. John's a mover. He's the kind of guy, if you go to a sports book, that guy puts down 10 grand, he moves the line. John's going to move Jonathan Taylor in the fantasy industry. When John speaks, they all listen. And John, by the way, fantasypoints.com. Give our listeners of Inside the Birds an idea of what kind of content they can find at your website.
Yeah, well, 25 years in this business, launching fantasyguru.com in 1995. Actually, technically, it was a snail mail newsletter. I sold the company 5 years ago, didn't really advertise it. Parted ways a couple of years ago. I was thinking, let me just do the media, things like that. But I quickly realized, one of the reasons I'm able to do a radio show every day is I don't prepare for it because I'm already prepared and doing TV and things like that. I also just learned so many lessons over 25 years that I'm like, this will be a waste if I don't try this again and just have so many great people around me. I had a young staff that I cultivated, Joe Dolan, who, Jeff, you probably have come across, Penn State guy, former sports editor, the Daily Collegian. Tom Brawley, also a Penn State guy. I had a kid, Graham Barfield, who I hired full-time, and then NFL.com took him from me. 24 years old, the kid got hired by NFL.com to be the fantasy managing editor, moved out to L.A. and everything. But we got him back, and Scott Barrett of Pro Football Focus. So I've got this great group, plus Greg Cosell's very involved, and of course Mr. Kaplan. And I'm like, okay, we've got something for everyone. And so great content, people are loving it, and great tools as well. And unlike most of our competitors, guys, you don't have to take out a home equity loan to afford a subscription.
There you go. And I gotta say, I'm a little jealous. You got all these Penn State guys, and you say you're for everybody. Maybe we can talk after this. Maybe there's a nice role that I could carve out there on fantasypoints.com?
Well, we'll set you up on the website for one. If you want some help there, we can start there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. A lot of great. We've got this draft software that I hired a bunch of 2 Ivy League nerds. And
where do you find these Ivy League nerds? Do you go to Penn and just stand outside classes? What are you doing?
Actually, a lot of these guys. This one guy's from Chicago, and he was just a subscriber and a fan.
Really?
Yeah,
cool.
I've slurred my voice there. Yeah, so he's a guy who does all these analytics and builds these tools for industry businesses. Dude charges $2,000 an hour.
Oh my God!
I was like, dude, this better be a labor of love. Yeah. But the software is great because
awesome.
It's got it updates in real time using the results of the draft, our projections, average draft positions. Wow. So if you're in round 5 and you're drafting, the software recommends the optimal picks, a lot of analytics, but you're in round 5. I'm like, should I go wide receiver or running back? The there's an advanced analytics button that'll tell you, okay,
Ooh.
take this guy. If you pass on this position, here's your next best player next round.
Wow.
And things like that.
Awesome.
So
and that is
really
called, is that the fantasy points? Is that the generator?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's good to know because I got a couple drafts coming up for our friends at the NFFC, and I'm going to use that for those drafts. So
Yeah.
I like that. Thank you for mentioning that. So that's awesome. And just go to fantasypoints.com to get your subscription. And look, I got notes up there already. And the content is second to none. And also, Cosell's the other cool thing is you have access to Greg Cosell's notes only on fantasypoints.com.
Yeah.
Read every scouting report Greg has for these players this year. Phenomenal stuff.
And Adam, Jeff has been, I mean, these young guys who I will work with, they're like kind of blown away by Adam this year and what he's doing. I think he's kind of energized.
Especially our off the record talks.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, we always have fun. That's number one.
Yeah.
But Adam's information is just so great. There's no fantasy site. It's got like
and by the way, John, I got to tell you, I've never worked so hard for doing fantasy stuff in my life. You guys have got me working like day and night and getting this stuff for who's winning this battle and that battle. When we first started that, I was like, man, I was overwhelmed with how many questions they had. And I whittled it down from 75 to about 10 in about a month. And I was like, man, I feel good about, though. To end this, though, guys, I do think it's going to be challenging. For fantasy purposes, you've got to be patient because these coaches don't quite know what to expect from some of these players because they only have had them for 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
That's why you got to be careful of your expectations this season.
Yeah, I think week one is going to be like the most revealing week one ever.
Because well, be patient though. Don't overdo it. The week one criers. Oh my God! Don't get me started with that. Oh yeah.
Right.
We'll talk about that on the next fantasy football show that we do. The week one criers. John, we can't thank you enough for coming on. Great stuff. Great information. I know everybody's got their fantasy drafts coming up in the next 7 to 10 days, so we cannot thank you enough for joining us on ITB TV. He is the owner and publisher of FantasyPoints.com and the morning host of SiriusXM Fantasy Channel. John Hansen, thanks so much, John.
You got it, guys. Great to be on the greatest Eagles podcast in existence.
Boom.
So, thank you.
High praise from an expert. Remember, everybody, go to statesidevodka.com for 10% off the best vodka out there. Use the promo code BIRDS on pickup or delivery. They deliver to the counties of Philadelphia, Chester, Delaware, Montgomery, Bucks, Westmoreland, or Allegheny. And that's going to do it for this edition of Inside the Birds TV. Thanks to our producer, Hunter Brody. Check out his work on his YouTube channel, Sports Talk with Broads. Make sure you catch the latest Inside the Birds podcast on any platform that you use, and go to InsideTheBirds.com for all of our latest Eagles coverage. Thanks for watching. We will catch you all on the next episode of ITB TV.